level then, because we don't want to leave anybody behind, right? All right. So here's the deal. Christians look to the Bible. You got that, right? You've heard of the Bible?
Yeah.
So the Bible has all of these books in it, and it's basic foundational. This is our tradition, and we go back, and it tells us who we are and what we do. The Bible starts with the book of Genesis, and the book of Genesis starts with, so the Bible starts with, in the beginning, God created the earth. So it starts with this creation story of God creating the earth out of a formless void. The thing is, it's always more complicated than that. There's actually two creation stories. There's God created the earth in 7 days, or created it in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. That story stops, and we get a completely new creation story. That's the one with Adam and Eve. So probably everybody's heard of Adam and Eve, right? But it's a different creation story. And I mean, it's important in Christianity to see that there's two creation stories that teach slightly different lessons, that don't agree, they don't mesh completely with each other. Because from a Catholic standpoint, we say, yeah, that's the way religion and theology works. It's always more complex than there's just one story and it goes straight through and it all makes sense and it's really easy. It's more complex than that, and there's different voices saying different things, and the truth is somewhere. How do you balance those different voices? How do you find the lessons? What is it really trying to say? This one and this one. And then the truth is somehow balancing all of this together. So it's all kind of nebulous, and it's an art form as you balance it, and different Christian theologians will differ on what does the text really say. What does it really mean for us in our life? But we have to say something about it. We have to grapple with that, although we'll never get to the bottom, and not everybody will agree. We all agree that we got to say something because this is the foundation of our beliefs. So what I'm going to do is give you today an understanding of what the creation stories tell us about who we are, why are we here, and how are we to live. Because it's my contention that that's what creation stories are for, and these ones in particular, that's what they're here for, is to answer these foundational things in a background way that sets the stage for everything else that's going to go on in the Bible. What I'll be giving you is a middle-of-the-road, modern Catholic exegetical understanding of this. So even within the Catholic tradition, there'll be different ones. In Protestant traditions, it'll agree with middle-of-the-road Protestant understanding of it, but there's people who would disagree with this understanding of these texts. But this is kind of the majority opinion, middle-of-the-road. At times of the semester, I might be trying to pull something over on you, but I don't think I am today. I think I'm just giving you the straightforward meat and potatoes. So, we're all on board so far? Question? Okay. So, here's how the text starts. And Charlton Heston does this the best in the movies. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Could I be in the movies? Yeah, I'm not quite Charlton Heston, but you know, I try. So this is the first day of creation. and then there's 6 more days of creation. And they all kind of go like this. God looks at this, he speaks, it is made, it is morning, it is night. God sees it's good. Day 2, day 3, day 4. Okay? What happens on each day? How does this story unfold? To understand the story, you need to understand the worldview of the people who are listening to this story. That is the Hebrews. So this is a picture of the world, the universe, as the Hebrews understood it. We have a dome here, and we can see the dome today, right? It's blue, right? You see it up there? That dome of the sky, it's blue, and there's waters above it. It's holding back waters that are above there. But every once in a while there's these doors, floodgates that open, and then what happens? Rain, snow comes through. Then they close them back up again. Across this are dragged things like the moon and the sun. They're pulled across that dome. And then set in it, there's stars that are fixed in that dome. But the dome is sitting on these pillars at the edge. And then those pillars go down, down, down into the earth. So the earth is sitting on these columns. Here's the earth. And below it is Sheol, the land of the dead. Right, that's where dead people are, down there. And then below this, there's the waters below. These pillars go down, but there's waters below and waters above. And we have this dome here and the earth here, and this is the space that we live in. Now, this is just obviously true to everybody in Old Testament times. It's as obviously true to them as for us. What would that look like? Wouldn't look like that, right? There's the sun that's a burning ball of hydrogen, and it's huge, and around it are these planets that are then spinning, and Earth is one of them. And then that's just one star in this galaxy that we call the Milky Way, and then there's other galaxies, and this all started with a Big Bang. That's our picture of the universe, just like this is their picture of the universe. Do any of you doubt that the earth is a sort of sphere spinning on its axis and then going around the sun? Does anybody doubt that here? How do you know that's true? Have you gone out and checked it out?
Yeah, I was going to buy a ticket later.
Yeah, there's some on Virgin Galactic, right? $250,000, you can go up into space yourself. Right, so none of us have investigated that, really. We don't have first-hand knowledge of that. But, come on. We don't need to. We know it's true. It's everybody tells us. We learn it from we're this high. It explains why the sun comes up and goes down and why we have seasons. It's all... It makes sense to us. Just like this made sense to the Hebrews. This is the way it is. So the story about the creation is going to make use of this. It's not proclaiming that this is true. It's making use of it and explaining something about what does it all mean. That's what the Genesis story is really telling us. What does this all mean? All right? So, let's go and say this. Now, if we were Greek, we'd say it's not sitting on water, not on pillars, it's on turtles, and it's turtles on the back of turtles all the way down. There's giant turtles under the earth. Little trivia point there for you. So, given that that's the picture that the Hebrews are working with, Then let's look at this story. As you heard, at the beginning, there was just chaos. There were the waters on that day one, and God spoke on the waters, so there's this chaos. And then from that, we get God spoke and there was light, and God separated the light from darkness. That's the part we read, right? And that's day one. On day two, God put that dome up there that's sitting on the pillars. And it says in the text, God made a dome in the sky and separated the waters above from the waters below. And God saw that it was good, day and night, day two. On day three, God makes that earth below and grows plants on it. That's what the text says about what happens on day three. And God saw that it was good. All right. On day four, God creates the sun and the moon and the stars. Now, interestingly, God created light on day one, but we didn't have a sun. We think the light comes from the sun, right? On day five, God creates fish and birds. Morning and night, it is good. And on day six, God creates the animals. And lastly, as one of the animals, creates humanity. And then, on the seventh day, God rests. So this is the way that the story unfolds. This is the 7 days of creation. Creating in 6 days, specific things in each of the 6 days. On the seventh day, God rested. Let's look at this as a literary work, as a structure, as a story. What we see is, on day 1 through 3, God separates and subdues chaos. Right? We start with chaos, and God carefully builds this structure up. A dome, earth below, grows vegetation on it. Then on day 4, 5, and 6, God fills this structure with moving and living beings. So here's the thing. To Hebrews, the sun and the moon, they're alive. Why would you think they're alive? And plants aren't alive. How do I know you're alive? You move, right? You actually answer some questions. Imagine that. Alive and thinking. Do plants ever move?
Slowly. I just don't see it.
Yeah, so you think they don't. I mean, actually the tree, it might grow, but it ain't moving. It ain't going to get up and move someplace else. Right? It's just going to stay there. So trees are not alive. The sun and the moon, they move. We see them every day moving across the sky. They must be alive. So these are all living things. Sun, moon, stars, fish, birds, animals, humans. These are all living things. These are all the background in which living things thrive and live. So this is a structure and living things. And then we look how this story is actually much more carefully structured, because on the first day when God made light and darkness, the fourth day, God makes sun, moon, and stars. First day, God creates light. On the fourth day, God makes living beings that are made out of light. It'll become more obvious when we look at God makes the water and the air, right? He puts that dome and leaves a space, a gap for air, and then there's still the waters above and the waters below. What does God do on the fifth day? Fill the waters with fish and the air with birds. So the fifth day parallels the second day. filling those spaces God made with living beings. Similarly, on the sixth day, God fills the earth with living beings. We live on the earth. And then the seventh day, God rests. So what we have here is a story that shows God carefully building a universe and then filling it with living things so that everything has a place that was made especially for it. And it even goes so far as to say, for the animals and humans, the animals have all the green plants to eat, and the humans have all the fruit trees and nuts to eat. That is, we all live without anything having to die. All of these animals and humans are provided for in this structure. And nothing has to die so that other things can live. We have this careful construction, and each step of the way we've heard, it is good. So then let's look at an important text from the sixth day, the creation of humans. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. This is the creation of humanity, okay? And it's got some important features about it, because we're one of those. We're kind of interested in the, what is humanity for? What are we here for? And we're going to get it from this. Who are we? First of all, we are made in the image of God. Unlike everything else. Let me take this. I think I can keep bunking it. It's going to show up in the tape really bad. We're made in the image of God. None of the other animals are. We have to think, what does it mean to be in the image of God? But first of all, we know that God is the one who has the plan, who puts structure to everything. God is intelligent, cares for things, is active. So that must be part of being made in the image of God, but we'll tease that out a little more. So if we're made in the image of God, we're not God, but we're like God. And that's an important distinction. God is other than us. In this story, man and woman are created together as a community, as equals. In the next story, we'll have Adam created before Eve. But in this story, man and woman are created together. In fact, all humanity is created together. And all humanity together is made in the image of God. And we are an integral part of creation. Just like the fish, the birds, the stars, we're just part of this, not apart from it. So, why are we here? Well, according to this, we're here to exercise God's dominion. God made all of these things, so God, of course, has dominion over them. But God gives us dominion, since we're made in the image of God. What does it mean to have dominion? Well, we're the ones, in a sense, in charge. But God created them, provided a place for them. To be dominion would be to keep that plan unfolding. to maintain the order and balance that God put into the universe. So we're in charge to make sure God's careful plan keeps unfolding the way it should. To do this, we have to be able to understand God's plan and to see and affect the world. So this would say we have to have understanding. Animals wouldn't be given dominion and aren't made in the image of God because the image of God has something to do with being able to understand. Like God thought, spoke, it happened. We need to be able to see and go, I get it, I see the plan. And we have to be able to affect the world. How do we find out what is the plan of God? What is the way the world should be? It's right there written in the structure of the world. We see the dome and the space created and we say, oh yeah, birds are meant to fly in the air. That's what they were created for. God didn't give a playbook. We have the Bible and we say, the Bible is supposed to tell us what God wants. But in the Bible itself, it doesn't mention the Bible, at least not at the beginning here. It says, God carefully created this structure and put us here. We should be able to see it, the order that God put into the world. He doesn't tell us then, notice how I made the dome in the sky. Notice what I did with the birds. No. He doesn't have to. This is an important point. And we're going to get to that when we tie in natural law, which is the approach to ethics that we're going to do. That we should be able to, according to this story, see the structure that God put into the world. Questions about that? Because got to get that down so we can circle back to it. So creation is good, as we heard at the end of each day. It is good. It's a gift made freely by God, not coerced from God. There's no evil sub-God and they're duking it out, a good and an evil God, and we're stuck in between. No. A good God takes creation, subdues it, and makes this ordered world that he says time and again is good. And puts us here. So the world works in accordance with God's plan, and we're here to make sure that keeps happening. Everything is rosy. This is the first creation story. It'll go south later. All right, so then we'll get to the second creation story. Adam and Eve. Before we do, thoughts, questions? Is this how you understood the story before, if you've heard it? Or does this make sense of, here's a creation story. It's not about science. It's about who are we and why are we here? And this is then the vision of, the religious vision, who are we and why are we here? No questions. We're on a roll, man. We got it. All right. So let's go to the second creation story, Adam and Eve. So God creates Adam, earth thing is what Adam is, from the ground. And he blows into its nostrils and it comes alive. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper as his partner." So out of the ground the Lord God formed every animal of the field, every bird of the air, brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. The man gave names to all the cattle and down the line. So Adam has the breath of God breathed into his nostrils. He's different than the animals that are just created from the dirt. But it's not good that the man be alone, and God is looking for somebody to accompany Adam. It turns out none of these things are good enough. And so God puts Adam to sleep and takes a rib out of him. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. Then the man said, "This at last is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called woman, for out of man this one was taken." So this is a creation of Eve. How are we to understand this? Well, let me just point out, individuals can function alone. Adam was living in the world all by himself, but that's not good. We can function independently, but God says that's not good. We need companions. But what kind of companions do we need? The cattle, the birds, the snakes, they're not good companions for us. Why? They're not equals. Why is Eve the suitable companion to Adam? Because she is bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, equal to him in every way. It's not that she's different or that she complements him or she completes him. No. She is his equal, but different. So that then the coming together of two equals, that's the kind of thing that God is looking for. Does that make sense? We're not used to thinking of Eve that way. You know, if you hear evangelical preachers, Eve is always second thought. No. Really, in the story, Eve is the equal of Adam. And that's why she's a suitable companion. So then the story goes on. God sets out some rules. I've provided for you. This is the Garden of Eden. You have no needs, plenty of food, joy, 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 all the way home. But God said, "You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. So this is the eating the apple, right? I mean, someplace in advertising you've seen the snake and the apple and the temptation of Eve, right? So this is how it really goes down in the story. And notice that what is the temptation? What is the snake offering her? You will be like God, knowing good and evil. That's key to the problem here. So, some more observations. We wanted to be wise, independent of God. That is, you will be like God, knowing good and evil for yourself, not having to hear it from God. But we're not God. We're God's image. So we shouldn't have our own plan. It's not for us to decide what's good and evil, how the world should be structured. It's up to us to see God's plan and implement it. Remember? But if we were able to know good and evil for ourselves, what we do with that is we follow our own plan. We don't have to be second fiddle to God anymore, implementing God's plan. The temptation is to come up with our own plan and to be like God, that is, God's in our own right. Does that make sense? And you see that it comes from the story. This is how you go from story to what is it teaching us about values and right and wrong. And so this is the lesson that's really coming from that story. And so we say this morality, this is what that story is about. It's about teaching this is what it means to sin. And this is what went wrong with the world. It was so nice on the seventh day. So the story goes on then when God finds out that they ate the apple. God punishes them all. The Lord God said to the serpent who tempted them, "Because you have done this, cursed are you among all animals and among all wild creatures. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel." Interestingly, I found a medieval source. I'm looking at medieval mystics now. So from the 15th century, 14th century, who looked at this and said, obviously, this is a tall tale. This is a myth. This isn't something that actually happened because God didn't rip the legs off of snakes. They never had legs. So even, we think the ancients took these things literally. No, they didn't. And here we have an ancient saying, or a medieval saying, you get to this, you realize that this is just a story with a moral. It's not a story about here's how it went down. To the woman, Eve, he said, "I will greatly increase your pangs in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children, yet your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." And to the man he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree about which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your face. You shall eat until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, you are dust, and to dust you shall return." What we see here is the breakdown of that pattern, that careful construction of the universe that we saw in the first 6 days. So these are the results of sin, of trying to follow our own path, to do our own plan. But it's surprising when you look at these things. Like you look at pangs in childbearing. To the ancients, it was just obvious that, wow, you're bringing new life in the world. It shouldn't be that painful. That's really painful. Why should it be so painful to bring life into the world? Obviously, something is wrong. That's a perfect example of how the world must be broken. It couldn't have been like that by design. So the pain of childbirth points to the brokenness of what was meant to be. And similarly, these other things, they point to the brokenness. So let's look at some of them. Right? All of the punishments point to a breakdown of the harmony that was supposed to be there in nature. Everyone is punished. The serpent's punished, Eve is punished, Adam is punished. They're all at fault. It's not one's more at fault than the other. Notice that at this point now, husbands rule over their wives. Your desire will be for him, but he will rule over you. That's because of sin. The fact that men rule over women is just another example of how society has broken down, of what shouldn't be there. What should be there? A community of equals. That's why Eve was made for Adam, so that they could be equal to each other and live in harmony. So the fact that men rule over women is a breakdown of the order that should be there in the world. It's not part of the design God had for the world. Just like the fact that crops are so hard to grow, thorns and thistles grow. No, crops should just, remember, on the third day, God made plants just grow. And on the sixth day, God created animals and people to just eat the plants that are just growing out of the ground. They should just grow there. You shouldn't have to work to raise crops. But you do. Why is that? Because it's all broken. It's all broken. So, who are we then when we get to the end of this? Well, we're people who were made in God's image, but we'd rather play God, not just be in God's image. The world is a good place, but it's broken. And that breaking apart is our fault. It wasn't part of God's plan. It's because we started following our own plan. So why are we here? From the first story, made when we were given dominion over things, to be God's ongoing presence in the world. Keep that order that God put in the world. But we blew it. So now, what should we do? How are we to live now that we've been cast out of the Garden of Eden, now that we've broken this creation? Well, we should discern the way things should be and act in accord with that. And this is what we call the natural law. The natural law is the way things were intended to be. And we should try and get on board with that. Let me give you an example of natural law. Natural law would be parents should love their children. Does anybody think that's not true? Is it possible, though, that parents don't love their children? It is possible. Sometimes it happens. So it's not a physical law of the universe. The universe doesn't force parents to love their children. But yet we know that's the way it should be, right? Why? Well, you have to think about it and you say, well, God made children come from parents and they're so delicate when they're born. They need help. They need caring for. They need someone to love and protect them. And so really parents, the way this is supposed to work is parents are supposed to love their children. And so they bring them up in this environment of love and care for them so that they can become adults themselves and then have children of their own that they can love. That's the way it should be, right? And we all feel that, believe that. But you have to look at the world and think about it in order to get to that. The world isn't always that way. It could be otherwise. But when it is, we can all agree that's not how it should be. How do you know? Well, just think about it. Right? We know this. We know this. But you have to think about it. That's the natural law. In the perfect, the way it should be, is the natural law is the way we look at the world and we see how it should be. And know that sometimes it's not like that, and that's a problem. And we should try and fix that. Does that make sense? So natural law is different than a physical law because it doesn't always have to be. But it's not like no law at all because it is how the world should be. But it takes our intelligence to connect up the way things are with the way they should be. So only we can know natural law. Animals, plants, they don't know the natural law. So they're not responsible for fixing it up. We are. So our job is to try to set right what we can. When we see parents who don't love their children, try and fix that. Try and help them out. Figure out what's wrong and make it right. But we also have to accept the limitations and the brokenness with humility. We're the ones that broke the world. So we have to accept that we do live in a broken world and we can't fix everything. And we need to therefore live with the fact, be okay with the fact that we live in a broken world, but not so okay that we don't do things to try and fix it. Or that we say it's okay that it's broken. No, we recognize that it is broken and we do what we can to fix it and then live with what we can't fix. God had a plan and still has a plan for the world. And we're part of that plan, part of the solution. We shouldn't just give up or be part of the worst, be part of the problem. If we do this, if we act as images of God trying to fix the world, that's where we will find meaning in life. That's where we will have our best life. We'll find joy in life. Because we'll be acting in accord with what we were made for. So, we'll have a good life. And that's how you have a good life, is to get back to playing the part we were meant to play in the world, trying to fix the damage that was done. And that's what we mean by then really salvation across Jewish and Christian traditions. Maybe it's tied to heaven as well, but that's a separate thing that grows out of a more primitive belief in salvation, is just having a good life here. I think that's it. Yeah. All right. That's the Christian vision in a nutshell. Like 40 minutes or something. Not bad.